supply chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended Podcast, and the founder of the Blended Pledge. And I am super excited to be here with you today because we've got Dimitri from Dole, and he was just recently featured in a Forbes article that we're going to be talking a little bit later on in the show. And we're going to be talking about food insecurity and how he's using supply chain to help combat food insecurity, which I love. All right. Well, before we get into all of that, I do want to talk about what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain, but we need to give a shout out to our show sponsor. So are you ready to find your community? Well, if you are struggling to find a supply chain community of like-minded professionals where you can level up, network, learn about best practices from experts in supply chain, professional development, and marketing, look no further. We created the Secret Society of Supply Chain to provide a safe space, a community for everyone. We offer unique opportunities for everyone to connect and grow in 3 distinct value-packed communities: the Supply Chainers, Women in Supply Chain, and the Creative Room. From the learn at your own pace, content-rich approach of the Supply Chainers to the empowering community-focused space of Women in Supply Chain and the marketing mastermind of the Creative Room, we mean it when we say there's truly a place for everyone. So head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com and sign up for your community or your membership today. All right, let's talk about what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a brand new episode for you. It's episode 421, and I was talking to Evan from Altana. Now, if you have not heard the recent news, they have recently raised $200 million, and they are now unicorn status for supply chain technology. If you have not gone to check them out, or if you don't know who they are, go and check out this episode because we talk all about who they are, what they do, real life examples of how they help their customers so that you can learn more about the incredible value chain management system that they're bringing to supply chain and to help you with sustainability as well. So again, it's episode 421 wherever you listen to the show. Next, I don't know what you're doing Thursday, August 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern, but I hope that you're going to be joining us for this LinkedIn Live. Now, click the attend button, even if you're not sure if you can attend live, because we will send you the recording afterwards. You're not going to want to miss this one. I mean, order orchestration in supply chains. It's a huge topic right now for a lot of supply chain professionals, supply chain teams, supply chain leaders, and we're going to be talking all about that. So head over to the link in the comments and click the attend button so that you don't miss out on this particular LinkedIn Live. All right, live tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern, Relex is back, and they're talking about optimizing forecast accuracy with AI. AI is a huge topic. Everybody's like, does it work? Does it not work? Relex is going to show you why it works and how they're using it to optimize forecast accuracy. So again, click the attend button. We'll send you the link if you cannot attend live. And then on Friday, Eric Johnson is going to be hosting LogTech Live, and he's going to be talking about behind the wheel brokers, drivers, and technology. You don't want to miss this one. Click the attend button, and I'll see you there on Friday. And then on Wednesday, August 21st at 10 a.m. Eastern, Christine Barnhart is back with the Supply Chain Unfiltered, powering contract manufacturing performance. Again, click the attend button so that we can send you that link and you can watch it later on if you can't attend live. Next, where am I going to be in person? And am I going to see you there? I really, really hope so. So September 9th through 11th, I'm going to be in Long Beach at IANA Expo. I'm going to be hosting Expo TV for IANA and super excited to see everybody there. And then September 30th through October 2nd, I'm going to be at the Inland Conference with the Journal of Commerce and S&P Global. I'm also going to be hosting Inland TV, which I cannot wait to see everybody there. And just a little bit earlier than that, September 25th to September 26th, I'm going to be at the Gain Summit, and I'm going to be interviewing all sorts of people there. So stay tuned. We've got tons of really amazing content coming out. Plus, we've got some really great new shows happening in September that I cannot wait to tell you all about. Last but not least, I came out with a new edition of the Monthly Hustle, which is my LinkedIn newsletter. Everything happens for a reason, how heartbreak led me to happiness. We've had some really great comments. People seem to be resonating with this particular edition. Thank you to everybody who read it so far. If you haven't read it, the link is in the comments. Let me know what you think. All right, now it is time to bring up Dimitri to talk all about supply chain sustainability, what they're doing, and I can't wait. All right. So, hi, Dimitri. How are you?
Sarah, good morning. I'm excited to be on your show this morning.
Yes, and we're kind of local to each other. We're only about 45 minutes away. So maybe one day we will do this in person or at least have lunch or something like that so we can talk about this stuff. But you were recently featured in a Forbes article talking about food insecurity, how you're using supply chains. And I cannot wait to dive into that because I've always said we can use supply chains for social good, and you are living proof of this. So before we get into any of that, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about myself. I've been in supply chain for the past 16 years in various leading and critical roles. Currently, I've been with Dole Packaged Foods here in Canada, looking after the Canadian market for 2.5 years. Prior to Dole, I've spent almost 10 years with the National Dairy Cooperative by the name of Gailey Foods. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Raised in Canada, deep sense of community and responsibility here. A little bit about myself. I'm a father of three, so supply chain logistics on a personal level runs through my veins. In my strategic responsibility, obviously, I look after end-to-end supply chain, but from a leadership perspective, I try to drive purpose driven decision making. Again, we focus on resilience, transformation, optimization, and we do this in lockstep with our community partners and just in supply chain in general.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to dive into that. Now, before we do that, we are going to talk about the poll of the week. We ask everybody a question every single Wednesday morning over on the Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn and Instagram. Then you're going to give us a bit of a market update. Then we're going to get into your article with Forbes. So let's talk about this. So the question that we asked everybody, what's your main professional goal for the next 6 months? Well, we had almost 230 votes. 33% of you said skill development. 31% of you said career advancement. 25% of you said work life balance. 25% is a big number. 12% said networking. Dimitri, when you saw this, what did you think? What do you think of the results? How do you feel about the next 6 months for your professional goals?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The results are definitely interesting, but I guess they kind of relate to where you are in your career. If I were to correlate within supply chain, so obviously career advancement and skill development ties into one another. I'm a big believer in justification for higher education. Myself, I hold numerous designations, whether it's the MBA, the CCLP, the CSCMP, as an example. Networking is another big element. These are all tied into each other. Again, if you want to advance your career or you want to understand what skills you need to develop, you need to network with other leaders in the industry. Work-life balance, again, I can't underscore this enough. We're hearing it from all facets, all different community members or employees.
Mm-hmm.
This is a challenging one. There's a lot of demand. We are in changing times right now, from a market perspective, from an economics perspective. So I could see how different peers, subject matter experts, community partners are certainly feeling about that.
Yeah, yeah, and work-life balance, I feel like it's kind of the journey of our lifetime. Like, it's not necessarily a destination because I feel like even if you get it right, something changes, something happens in your life, and then you have to readjust and try to figure it out. If anybody's figured it out 100%, please send me a DM because I have not figured that out yet. Although I am enjoying what I do and enjoy my life, and I think that's half the battle, right, Dimitri?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Now, it's the time of the show where we usually do a market update. So, really interesting. We like to get a perspective from people in your position with your teams and how you're seeing the market, the conversations that you're having. Can you give us a bit of a market update and insight into your day to day and what you're seeing?
Absolutely. So I'll talk about it from a macro perspective. Consumers are definitely feeling the pinch of inflation. And food
Mhm.
inflation has been very prevalent for the last 3, 4 years, especially during COVID. We're seeing consumer purchasing habits that are changing. Basket sizes are getting smaller. Um, they're making different choices in the marketplace, and we're definitely, from a supply chain perspective, trying to combat that. We're trying to deliver efficiency, how we can deliver and combat inflation, and we'll talk about the strategies throughout our discussion here. But again, we're definitely seeing the pinch. There's definitely an overall softening in the marketplace that's happening, on in within various channels, whether it's food service, whether it's retail, and that's because of pressured inflation. Consumer habits are changing. And we're trying to address those issues. We're trying to be part of the solution as opposed to the problem.
Yeah, well, I saw a lot of people traveling this summer, right? A lot of people are changing their spending habits to traveling. There was a lot of people. I think I spoke to 4 people who were traveling to Europe 1 week this summer, which was amazing because you never really heard of that before. But yeah, I think you're right, and I appreciate that update. I think, they are changing. We got to figure out how they're changing and what that means to the business, but also how do we use our supply chains for good, right? Not only for the business, but also for the consumer, for our teams, for our leaders, because we all want work life balance. We don't want too much stress. All right, let's get into it because I want to spend a lot of time on this article. I thought you did such a great job. I don't know how it came to fruition. I would assume that Forbes sort of reached out to you, but I don't know how they found out about what you were doing to help solve the food insecurity using your supply chain. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that story, but then also, let's talk a little bit about how you first became aware of the food insecurity issue and how you could be part of the solution.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, as a member of the community, and just through networking and talking to community peers, whether it's supply chain or personal related, you're certainly hearing the notion and the topic of food insecurity. People are talking about food inflation. They're talking about malnutrition. You're seeing it all across, directly or indirectly. Again, joining Dole, they have a malnutrition campaign. And again, just being part of food chains in general, not just Dole, but throughout my career in general, food chains, when you're working on, trying to get the goods from farm to shelf, uh, you can't help but not notice some of these prevalent topics that are happening in the marketplace or the communities that you operate within. There's a couple of fun facts, not fun facts, challenging facts that I want to kind of stress across during this call today. Not a lot of people know or are cognizant of the fact, but globally we produce 3 billion dollars worth of, sorry, not $3 billion, but we produce enough food waste to feed 3 billion people globally.
Wow.
And 925 million people worldwide go hungry. So again, malnutrition or food insecurity is an epidemic, but it's just mind blowing to even fathom that we have enough supply, we have enough food source globally that could be repurposed accordingly to solve these UN sustainability goals.
Yeah.
Just talking about the two different markets between Canada and the US, $161 billion worth of goods, food goods in the US go to waste every year. 42
Wow.
million people in the US are hungry. In
Wow.
Canada, $40 billion worth of food waste exists, and 7 million plus uh, go hungry or have malnutrition exposure. So again, when you're thinking about these facts, they are just astonishing that, there has to be more purpose-led decision making from
Mhm.
any level, from any position in the food chain, where we can address these types of insecurity issues.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to see the ratios, right? It's really just a matter of getting that food to people who need it. And I was recently had a dinner with Jennifer over at Move for Hunger. I've connected the 2 of you, which
Absolutely.
hopefully they'll be able to help you even more. Because some of the stats that came from this particular article, 8.7 million people in Canada alone live in food insecure houses. Now, this isn't just something that is happening in Canada. This is happening in the US. It's happening globally. Um, and you actually, I think, did 1 million servings just in 2023 as Dole alone. Was that just in Canada or was
That,
that in North
that was
America?
just in Canada between
Wow.
Vancouver and Toronto.
Amazing, amazing. And you're saying that there's probably like 2 million to go. So it's almost like, how do we get involved? How do we figure it out? But really, it starts at supply chains. It starts with supply chain leaders, supply chain professionals, understanding and designing their supply chain to, make sure that we can use our supply chains for good. Now, I'm going to bring the article back up because you actually talk about and give sort of that step by step of what people need to think about, or sort of supply chain professionals need to think about and do to be able to help design their supply chains this way. Can you sort of go through this, and how did you sort of come up with this and figure this out?
Absolutely. So, if I were just to preface this just before we dive in a little bit more, it starts with purpose led decision making. So, again, from a leadership perspective, leading in critical roles, and I'm not talking about your positioning title, I'm talking about the control of the elements that you have within the scope of your role.
Right.
Again, from a supply chain perspective, we lead with data. Okay. We have accessibility to ERP systems. For instance, Dole operates with software that's called Blue Yonder. We utilize it for our supply and demand planning purposes. And again, through that control tower, we have visibility as to what's going on within our supply chain network. So again, once you identify that waste exists, and organically it will exist because consumers are changing their habits, you're trying to marry up supply versus demand, you're trying to time everything to the marketplace from farm to shelf, and
Mhm.
there are things that will ever be changing: consumer habits, like I said, inflationary pressures. So sometimes excess and obsolete inventory will exist. It exists in every network.
Mhm.
So one of the triggers that we had is we were tasked to kind of revisit that and relook: why would we be destroying perfectly good product when it could be repurposed within the community for a greater good?
Right.
And that's where this framework came about. We looked at our control tower, we mapped out the perishability, which was step one in the equation. Then we developed control mechanisms. We basically identified control points along our life cycle of the inventory. And we created a push system in joint efforts and lockstep with our community partners, the food banks. So
Mhm.
as the inventory got to a certain perishability state, it would automatically be pushed to these community partners way ahead, from a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. And
Amazing.
and that's where we come down to that last step. Again, just being proactive about it. The last thing you want to do is just continue to sit on that inventory in hopes that something else is going to transpire.
Well, and I also think like this is intentionality. So on my other podcast, Blended, I'm just about to do an episode on intentional inclusion, but this is almost like intentional for social good, right? What is our intention? How can we use what we have? How can we design it and map it out? And then how do we distribute it and make sure that it gets to the people who need it? So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because a lot of time with sustainability, a lot of times with thinking about how we as supply chain leaders or supply chain professionals can get involved. How do we make a difference? Well, there's a variety of ways that we can do that. And like you said, it's with data, it's with our knowledge, it's also internally with some of the products that we move on a day to day basis. And, what has been kind of the most inspirational for you being part of this? Like, when you came from Gailey Food, so you've kind of been in food your whole life, but did sort of a light bulb go on when you moved to Dole and they were really focused on this and how you could really make a difference?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it became even more prevalent during COVID.
Yeah.
Um, and just, with all the supply chain disruptions that were happening, food banks, for one example, weren't getting
Mhm.
enough supply. It's been in the media, the
Mhm.
news, on a consistent basis. So again, from a leadership perspective, you're thinking about: how can I be part of the solution? How
Mhm.
can I address the problems that are in the communities that we
Mhm.
operate within?
Yeah.
And one of the most rewarding elements was just, again, witnessing this come to fruition.
Yeah. And one of the things that I do want to call out, because I go to a lot of conferences and there's so much food waste from conferences. Like it drives me crazy. And I was talking to Jennifer from Move for Hunger and I was like, how do we, move some of this food? And she said prepared foods aren't able to be sent to food banks and things like that. So if anybody is out there that is working on a solution for this, or event organizers or people going to conferences, even that, making sure that food is getting to the right people, or consuming some of that food, or reducing some of the food that you're purchasing, can really go a long way and make a big difference. All right, let's get to our next article. So this article is with Supply Chain Brain, and we're talking about Denso. And so I don't know if you're familiar with Denso, but Denso is mostly car parts. They have been focused mostly on car parts, but they've recently gotten into agriculture and food, and it's a $7 billion market in greenhouses to provide fresh produce. Now, you and I were kind of talking about this earlier on before we jumped on the show. And I didn't quite realize that, because you're talking about the fact that we have a lot of food, we just need to get it to the right people. And Denso is like, well, we need to create greenhouses so that we can create more food. And so there's a little bit of a different strategy, but you're also saying that this gives us opportunity to be able to actually produce food more locally and closer to the people who need it. So talk to me a little bit about this article. What did you think?
Yeah, no, this article is definitely interesting and it's got many different perspectives. My takeaway from this is they're trying to reposition greenhouses into local markets from a nearshoring perspective. So I'll
Okay.
give you an example from a pineapple standpoint. Pineapple requires a certain agronomy, a certain heteroculture, and again, the conditions in Canada, you can't really grow pineapples. They're just not, from a climate perspective, it's just not designed for it. So again, I think what Denso is trying to kind of bet on is that they're trying to partner with greenhouse developers, where if you can somehow reposition that within the North American market, as an example, automate certain functionalities and increase the supply of pineapple locally. And again, they talk about the tomato element in that.
Yeah.
But again, that would be wonderful. Repositioning your supply from a sustainability standpoint, there are environmental ESG benefits to that because you're not shipping all across the globe, for instance. And not a lot of folks know, but right now, supply for pineapple is tight. Like,
Hmm.
we've had some climate challenges over in the Philippines and Thailand, and in general, it's a very tight market out there.
Larry over on my personal LinkedIn says pineapples for the win. I guess he likes pineapples, but yes, if we can produce pineapples in Canada, I mean that is a bit of a win. But like you said, and you just sort of sparked a light bulb moment for me, because decarbonization is on everybody's mind, and so how do we reduce how much we move food all over the globe, considering some of the places we can only produce so much, like you said, and it's in tight supply. One of the things that they mentioned, though, in this article is the shortage of water and labor, which has been a bit of a barrier to the agriculture process. Would you agree with that? Are you seeing that?
It really depends on the marketplace. So Dole is vertically integrated. So labor for us, we're trying to develop communities all across the globe. That's one of the initiatives that we have underway.
Hmm.
But I agree, labor in general, even from a farming perspective, um, certain generations are not really leaning towards that. There's this whole AI concept, so
Hmm.
farming is not as prevalent, and I think that's a big risk for future generations. I think that we got to make farming more exciting in the long run.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you, but hopefully greenhouses will help with that. All right, let's get to our last article of the day. And this one is an announcement that DHL partnered with Envision to launch a green logistics partnership. Now, it starts with sustainable aviation fuel, and they're trying to advance decarbonization in air transportation. We just talked about that in bringing production more locally so that we don't have to move products around. But they're coming at it from a fuel perspective, which I know we've been talking about in ocean freight for a very long time.
Mhm.
And there's provisions and all sorts of focus groups and things like that that are trying to figure out what that fuel needs to look like on ocean freight. But it looks like DHL and Envision are coming together and they already have the solution for air transportation. One of the things that really stood out for me in this article, though, is that their executive compensation is linked directly to their ESG goals. And so we talk a lot about sustainability initiatives and how do we get it from the top down? How do we get buy in? How do we get people invested in it? Well, this is one of the ways that you do it. And DHL has linked those executive compensation to the ESG goals. So, talk to me about this, Dimitri. What did you think about this particular article and this announcement?
I think that this is a fantastic partnership for DHL with Envision Group. I think this partnership is a significant step towards advanced sustainability in logistics. I think they're actually walking the talk from top down, which
Mm,
is imperative. If I were to kind of contrast what we're doing here at Dole, we're taking similar footsteps as well when we're choosing our partners. Again, we're not as vertically integrated where we have our own ocean freight ships, but
right.
we partner with carriers such as MSC, as an example, and they utilize a biofuel solution that delivers CO2 savings by replacing conventional fossil-based fuels
Wow.
with a second generation bio component. So again, very similar in terms of the undertakings, but
Mm.
when we procure services and when we procure certain steps, we are socially conscious in that particular nature. Uh,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
There was one other example I wanted to bring. So
Yeah.
we also partner with KNN from the ocean freight perspective, Kuehne and Nagel, and they have solutions towards promoting sustainability by selecting partners on our behalf that actually endeavor in these types of initiatives, such as the DHL and Envision Group.
So they're doing some of that research for you and making sure that they are partnering on the other side or bringing everybody together who have the same mentality around or maybe even the same ESG goals. I mean, that's a big deal. It's one of the things that I'm glad that you brought up because a lot of times everybody's like sustainability, just a checkbox. Not today. Like when you're looking at working with service providers, you're looking at working with technology, you're looking at working, procuring some of those services like you said, you're now asking the questions, right? You're asking the questions about how they think about ESG goals. What are their ESG goals? How are you going to help us attain ours? What does that look like? How can we partner to make sure that we are, doing some social good with our dollars, but also our supply chains as well?
Absolutely. And to your point, Sarah, it doesn't have to be extremely sophisticated. It doesn't matter if you're a small, medium, or large size enterprise. There are steps that you could take, smaller steps. I'll give you a couple of prime examples or initiatives that we had here at Dole locally within the marketplace. When we took a look at our 3PL warehousing portfolio, we restructured and repositioned them closer to our customer density.
Mm,
Um, focus on customer order frequency as an example. If you're going to a customer 3 days a week, work with that customer to reduce their order frequency down to 1 or 2 days a week. If you can cube out the trucks and there is space, like
right.
why not reduce that order frequency so you're not sending incremental trucks
Hmm.
for whichever reason. And then lastly, modal shifts, simple shifts by just working with the customers on lead time, where you transitioning from over the road to rail. These are simple steps that organizations can take locally.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you for sharing that with us. Now, we've got a couple of questions in the audience, but we're not going to have the time to necessarily get to them. So, Chuck, I do see your question. We're going to tag Dimitri in the comments so that he can get back to you directly. And then, Bayram, I see yours over on YouTube as well. We'll try to get to Dimitri to reach out to you. Red Phoenix says, what ERP data do you use? This one I think you can answer fairly quickly. Expiry date or other factors as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We look at expiry dates. We look at the life cycle of our products. We also build in the lead time, so we map out the lead time that it takes from origin to the marketplace, and we're cognizant of that. But we also built in, for instance, buffer zones or risks. For instance, if there are port delays that are happening, if there are blank sailings that are happening in the ocean freight industry, so we have to take all of those variables into account where we're mapping everything out. And then obviously we take a look at the forecast from the customers, and once we marry all of that up, we land at the net demand.
Awesome. Well, listen, we've only got about 30 seconds left. I want to thank everybody who tuned in to the show today. But Dimitri, you've been the star of the show. You have helped us design our supply chains to make sure that we can be part of that social good element. You've helped us really talk about, greenhouses and producing food locally and making sure that it gets to the communities that need it. But then also talk about your ESG goals and how you look at the partners that you're partnering with. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll see everybody next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been wonderful.